the Office of Program and Project Management. It's headed up by Shane Farrell. So, so you may have some interactions with that organization as well. We will give you more formal information about this. I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on some of those things, that names and faces are going to be changing a little bit, especially as we go forward with the committee meetings. One of the things James and I have been talked about last week is we may need to change the names of the committees, maybe something just that simple. Strategic and legacy management, for example, is one of the ones. We just want to make sure that the committees and their titles are more closely aligned with this reorganization. So that's just some of the administrative things that we're working on going forward. If anybody has any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. And of course, first I want to start asking about the membership package. Is the package that was submitted, will it bring our roster up to full strength?
Yes.
So we'll end up with 25 members.
That's the plan, yes, sir.
Okay. About how many of those are brand new people? I'm assuming, the reason I ask is because if we've got whatever 19 brand new people, we've got a lot of training and those sorts of things to figure out how to accommodate. So how many of those approximately are brand new people?
Delisa, do you mind taking that for me? I don't know the exact number off the top of my head.
Yeah, we have, I believe, 11 members. Hopefully that will be returning or reappointing, and then that leaves 14 new members. So yes, James and I have already been talking about the first thing right off the bat would be, of course, the orientation meeting, that we'll have. And that's just where we meet with the new folks first. And so, but yeah, that's where we're at with that. Okay. And we also, as you know, with the new members, we usually assign a current, member to be their mentor. And so because there are so many new ones, we might have to like double up on some of that. But we're aware that this will be a very important or significant time for the new members, and we want to make sure that we have everything ready for them, and so that to make the transition easier for them. So we'll be getting help from you guys. James, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, in classical me fashion, I am going to tack something on. Just, it's also important to remember that for the returning members, it will have, their last meeting in person will have been November 2019. It's going to be a considerable amount of lag in between then to now, even for those folks. I think it would be in everyone's best interest to treat 2022 as year zero. And we're going to have to start over in a lot of big, meaningful ways.
Do we have any, I guess thinking about the committee structure, do we have any chairs that are left over from the last batch?
Charles and Jim.
So 2 of 4.
Oh, well, I mean, those are people that are currently serving that were elected chairs. As you and I were talking about before the meeting, we have effectively put committees on hold for now because there is just the 6 of you. It doesn't make a lot of sense to run committees at the moment. I think that when we get back and bring everybody up, we're going to be taking a look at the committee structure, as Amy mentioned, and everything else. That's when we probably need to do our chair election again and just get everything started. That's just kind of our 0 point and where we need to move off from, is jump off from there. March is going to be a big meeting in a lot of ways. We always have to tackle budget in March. We're also going to have to tackle just basic understanding of site operations. So it's going to be a huge it's a fun mountain to climb, and I'm looking forward to the challenges and opportunities in front of us.
Well, I agree. I think it's a great opportunity. I just want to make sure that, we're prepared. If I had to estimate now, we're probably going to end up with 1 to 2, at least, committees that have chairs who've never participated in the CAB conceivably. So we need to figure out.
Right.
Well, it could could be. We just need to, I just want to be thoughtful about how we proceed that way. When are we expecting to get, when will we get approval? Let's put it that way. Are we going to be approved and ready to roll? And they're officially appointed in February, as I recall. Are we going to get, have you gotten feedback that will be approved by then?
Well, I can't give you a specific date on that, but I know that headquarters is as interested in we are. They're as interested as we are in not seeing what happened last year happen again.
Right.
I'll tell you, they're invested in getting it done too. So
okay,
we're hopeful.
Yeah, good. I am too. I just wanted
Yeah,
to
I'm
kind
hopeful.
of
I can't give you an exact date because the process, does take some time. There are a lot of people involved in the process, but we are confident that we've sent something very good package forward. So.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions in that regard. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else from any of the board members? Questions, comments, concerns that we need to cover before we're moving on? All right, Amy, you're still unmuted. Did you have anything you wanted to add, or am I just?
I just wanted to make sure that you make a comment about what's going on with the live feed so that the people who are just joining that live feed understand that they'll be able to.
Yeah, so we did have a few issues getting it going, but the equipment was recording the whole time. So the full meeting will be online after this. We'll get that uploaded as quickly as we can, no later than that this afternoon. So folks who are watching online, if you missed Mike Budney's remarks, they'll be available a little bit later today. Thank you, Amy. All right, so if that's it for our DOE updates, why don't we move over to EPA? John, how's it been?
Well, it's okay. I was going to mention, actually, my last Savannah River trip was over the second week of August. We had scheduled a joint walk down South Carolina. It was right when Delta started really increasing. So they actually decided to pull out because a lot of the stuff they'd, of course, been to. But some of you know, Nuclear Regulatory Commission has a role with the tanks and such. So they actually reduced their staff and what they were doing, but I still joined them because I was already over there for some other meetings on the D area and Ford building. So we did an actual tour of some of the tanks, the big sandstone tanks. Did I say that right? Which is the first time I've actually been down there since at least number 7, 8, or have been, I think we were in 6 actually, where they were literally putting up the wall as we were there. So that was kind of cool to see that. And that was, again, an abbreviated meeting. I was going to mention we have a new acting division director in Superfund. Some of you may know Randall Chafin. He's going back to his role as deputy Superfund division director, which he's been for many, many years. He was our acting division director since Carol Monell moved up as our deputy regional administrator. So Ramon Torres is our new acting Superfund division director. He's worked in our Region 6 Dallas office a lot, Chicago office, our Athens lab, and now, I guess for at least 4 months, will be our acting Superfund director. And again, one reason you may know, well, this happens a lot with DOE, but EPA, we don't usually get sometimes these bigger positions full time, like who's the actual division director, till we get our political appointee in. That will be so John Blevins has still been our acting regional administrator since the new administration took over, and that's not uncommon either because political appointees of our 10 regional administrators is usually low down on the totem pole for all the political appointees that have to be done with any new change of administration. So John Blevins, you may or may not know, he's still our acting regional administrator. We recently got signed to send back to Department of Energy, Brian Hennessy, my counterpart, the A13 Outfall record decision. And that was one of our key targets. It's always a huge target, record decision for EPA. And that's actually one that wasn't officially due till November, which is in the next fiscal year. We actually got it moved up to August and then finally got it signed here in early September on schedule, because the lower 3 runs rod, you may or may not be aware of, it was originally planned for this last quarter of this fiscal year, but got, with other reasons, got delayed Actually, it should be coming maybe December. I think we're ahead of schedule, but it's now scheduled for January of 2022. So that's our two big on the CERCLA side. I'm trying to think anything else. Oh, and related to that, that's kind of what was happening when we came over to do that inspection with the NRC. Is that's about when the Delta variant was going up. So I think we were about to transition back in our regional offices, like Department of Energy and nuclear regulatory commissions, they were saying. But now with that, I think the earliest we would start transitioning in is somewhere in November, which I think most people interpret that as January. So that it makes it a little harder to travel, which is hard for some of us that like are commonly have Savannah. I'm over, of course, all the Savannah River projects as the FFA manager, Federal Facility Agreement Manager. I'm also over parts of Oak Ridge and other nuclear sites in our region. So unless it's something to do with field inspection, we're very limited in travel. We may have a meeting like we had at Savannah River in August, but we have to put on there that we're actually doing some type of field inspection to actually get approved. So we're hoping that'll be relieved. And now that you may be aware that I think all federal employees now have to be vaccinated. I don't think they have a caveat of being tested anymore, but I'm not. So right now we're having to test that in our agency. I don't know if DOE and having to do that as well. I'm assuming that's federal employee wide. That's all I can think of at the moment, unless you have any questions.
All right, any questions from the board? Looking for hand raises or open mics. Not seeing anything. No questions for EPA? John, you got off easy today. Thanks for attending. Appreciate your time. Let's move over to DHEC. Susan, are you online?
Hey, how are you?
Great to see you again.
Good to see you guys. Well, I've got a few updates from our central office, and then I'll turn it over to Grace Ann for her updates. John mentioned a couple of FFA documents, the records of decision at the Stormwater AO13 Outfall and Lower 3 Run, so I won't go through those again. But we also have a 5-year review document that the department recently signed, and that's for the 6th 5-year remedy review report for the Savannah River site operable units with engineered cover systems. So that document goes on to EPA now for them to sign, and then it will be available for the public after that. I've also got a few RECRA updates for you. At our last meeting, I mentioned that there's a public comment period for the SRS draft hazardous and mixed waste permit. And that started, that public comment period started July 22nd and was running through September 7th. We have extended the public comment period until October 22nd of 2021. And we received a request for a public hearing. So there will be a virtual public hearing, and it's scheduled for October 7th at 6:30 p.m. This will be an opportunity for the public to voice comments and concerns regarding the facility and the permit. Our DHEC staff will give an overview of the permitting process and the draft permit requirements. The hearing is only for the activities that are on public notice, and you can sign up to attend the hearing if you're interested on our website, and I will share the link in the chat when I'm finished, so you can go on and sign up if you're interested in that. Also, from our record program, DOE recently requested from DHEC a temporary authorization to implement an in-situ remedial technology in the western sector of the M Area Hazardous Waste Management Facility. So SRS is proposing to use emulsified zero-valent iron, or EZVI, to remove residual contamination in the subsurface. So what they will do is conduct a field scale study to determine if the EZVI is a viable option for corrective action. And then if the results of the field study are favorable, there's going to be a public notice, and there would be a modification to the RECRA permit to add that technology as part of the RECRA corrective action program. So those are all of the RECRA and FFA updates that I have. I can stop for questions or turn it over to Grace Ann for any ESOP or other district updates that she might have.
Let's pause here, see if anybody had any immediate questions about that.
Okay.
Questions from the board? Oh, Greg, yes.
Yeah, thanks. I just out of curiosity, how many, I guess I'm wondering why the time period for public comment was extended, just out of general curiosity, and how many submissions did you actually get?
I'm not sure what the total submissions is, but I know that we did get some interest from a homeowners association to the north of the site asking about the permit, the public notice. And so it was extended based on that, and the hearing was requested based on the input from that homeowners association.
Okay. Are y'all required to get a certain number of comments or submissions, or you have to, or you do have to extend the period?
If we get a request for a public hearing, then we'll have a meeting.
Okay.
And so to coincide with that, because we'll be having the hearing for in October, by extending the public comment period, that gives everyone an opportunity to hear what is said in the public hearing.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, Grace Ann.
Hi everyone. Other than just an update, our report as well as the ESOP video, we don't really have anything new, but we are getting closer to having our report done with the goal of having it published by the end of this year. And then we are currently in the process of finalizing the ESOP video that we were trying to update. So hopefully, by the end of this year, we will have that ready to go to welcome in all the new CAB members once March comes around. So thank you.
Thanks. Grace Ann, any questions for Grace Ann? No? Seeing none. All right. Thank you, folks. We appreciate it. Up next on our agenda, and I just had a look, we've got our infrastructure update, so we'll be moving over to Dave Bender. I hope you guys really appreciate this. Remember, this isn't a specific facilities infrastructure. This is the general site infrastructure for all of Savannah River. So, Dave, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Okay, thanks, James. I am going to share my screen. Go. And I should be sharing now. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dave Bender, and my duty is to provide DOE oversight for common infrastructure and utilities here on Savannah River site. So this afternoon, I'm going to go through and provide you a very brief overview of the state of SRS common infrastructure and utilities. Okay, Savannah River site. We're going to be here a long time. Now we can basically say that Savannah River site is an enduring site, just because our DOE SR mission is projected to run out to at least 2065. Therefore, we're going to need good roads and buildings, and not forget reliable infrastructure in terms of electricity and water for quite a long time. So to keep us on track, we will need consistent resourcing and a supplemental boost each year so that our base budgets can keep a steady pace with all our operations and maintenance needs, as well as do those infrastructure upgrades, so to speak, that we need to keep the site running not only for today, but also for the future. And the site, as you know, is a busy place. These are our major operational mission facilities that are located on site. And this doesn't even include the future pit processing mission there in F area. And to support these mission facilities, just like any other city or large industrial park, we provide and take care of basic utilities that include roads and bridges, as well as domestic water and sanitary wastewater. And each area has its own fire water systems. I would like like to take a few minutes to point out some of the Savannah River site's unique infrastructure and utility systems. And one of those is that we have steam plants. We have 5 steam plants that burn biomass wood chips as their primary fuel. And these provide steam energy for a mix of both processing as well as environmental controls. Further, we're kind of unique for a DOE site in that we have 2 high hazard dams. And these dams themselves are not hazardous. This is simply basically a FEMA designation saying that if there was a potential, that there's a potential for loss of life downstream should one of these 2 dams fail. And I'm talking about what we call Parr Pond and L Lake. More unique is that we have a river water system. And this system was originally designed to provide cooling water to the site's 5 heavy water reactors. Since then, the river water system has been tailored to provide water to our largest steam plant and to ensure that the radiological contaminated sediments in our 2 major lakes, those are the 2 dams I mentioned earlier, stay covered with water. And finally, we have a railroad system. The site has its own railroad system, currently with 3 locomotives, which move material and process between the processing areas and picks up other rail shipments that are brought to the site's boundaries. Now, in the 2 previous slides, I talked about our major mission facilities and then our common infrastructure and utility systems. One thing that's really important that I emphasize the difference between mission facilities and common infrastructure utilities. Because why would that be important? And some of you probably already know, and that's because we have to figure out how we're going to pay for each of these. And we'll see more of that on the next slide. But in this slide, I wanted to point out 3 of our basic common infrastructure basic types that we have. And the first of all is the basic type, and that's just buildings and for our shops, as well as our administrative areas, and of course, roads and bridges. The other type of infrastructure we have is your basic utilities, not to mention river water that I talked about earlier, and of course, our steam plants and steam distribution systems. And then finally, there's the service centers, where information technology is a major service provider to site mission customers, as well as all the supporting organizations. And we have other service centers, such as our instrument calibration facility that you see pictured there to the right. And we also have other mechanical shops and also service centers for things like radios. Now, here we are, funding to run SRS. Well, that comes through appropriations. And through appropriations, they get broken down to us into what's known as program baseline summaries. You'll hear a lot of talk about PBSs. So all of the mission programs, such as nuclear materials, has their own PBS. So does liquid waste and also our environmental cleanup mission. So our common infrastructure isn't funded through PBSs. Our common infrastructure is funded by the site through the setting of rates, so that each year our PBSs can then contribute to funding our common infrastructure and utilities. So as you see there on the left-hand side over here for our utilities and services, what we do, we look at what's we spent or what we required in the past. We look at what's forecasted, and then we have to look at what our requirement is to say provide electricity or provide water. And then we have to come up with a rate. And that rate is what the PBSs will need to pay in order to get that utility or service. I think you've probably seen the insurance commercial, you know. So in this case, the mission facilities, through their PBSs, pay for what they need. And this is pretty much like what you would do at your own house. Basically, you need electricity. Therefore, the local utility provider provides you with, you know, the bill on what you consume. And just like that's what our mission facilities do. They need electricity, obviously, and they pay basically through our site management and administration and accountants, basically a kilowatt per hour rate. So to fund the maintenance and operation of our common facilities and roads, so on the right-hand side, you could think of this pretty much as part of an indirect or overhead rate. This can be analogous to, say, it like a tax. Thus, this indirect rate also includes funding for all the other site overhead expenses and services that's necessary to keep the site running. Another way we can look at this also is in this difference between mission facilities and common infrastructure and utilities is we call it the fence. We often refer to inside and outside of the fence. So like your house, any plumbing or electrical work or even a roof repair, guess what? It belongs to primarily the homeowner. But up to, say, that electrical meter, then that belongs to the utility. So much like that, in our case, inside the fence, the mission facility will take care of whatever they need to maintain their infrastructure to their PBS budget. And meanwhile, outside the fence, that is my or our responsibility. And that work is how we get funded through those indirect rates that I spoke on the previous slide. Now, so our mission is to provide infrastructure and utilities to the site to make it all work. And this is a 24/7, 365-day task. And what we do, we report each system that was covered on a previous slide daily. And we look at what their status is and what they're trending monthly. And then we track all the improvement projects that we're pursuing that year on a weekly basis. But our job is also to look beyond just today and the immediate next week, but we also have to look beyond into the future. So every 5 years, we do an in-depth study of each of our infrastructure and utility systems to forecast future requirements and the latest technologies out there to propose recommendations for delivering more efficiently and reliable services in the future. We are currently scoping out the remaining recommendations or building them into our 5-year improvement plan. And also, just want to point out there on the bottom graph here is that not only are we working at these recommendations and dispositioning those, either incorporating them or finding that they're the initial recommendation in our right sizing plan may not be feasible or not. But we're also looking at how we can incorporate sustainability and when we do building improvements to reduce our energy intensity across the site. And we've been doing this quite well by incorporating cool roofs. And I'll show you a slide of that a little bit later. Whenever we replace a roofing system on either one of our common infrastructure facilities or even on our mission facilities. And that also goes for HVAC or air conditioning upgrades too. Always go with the most efficient unit possible. And whenever those fluorescent bulbs or any other light fixture burns out, we always replace that with an LED. And through that kind of discipline, we've seen a pretty substantial drop in how much energy it takes to operate our facilities by square footage. And you may recall that back in 2019, we were looking real hard at bringing a solar project to the site. And we worked very closely with Dominion Energy on that. We did a lot of negotiations with them. We coordinated with headquarters. We did a lot of our own modeling. And what we came to conclusion at that time is that without a substantial subsidy, because we were talking about a 10 megawatt solar field, that's pretty large, that we just couldn't make a business case for it now, given what our electricity rates were at the time. But we're going to take another look at that in 22, because one of the key things about making a solar farm work on Savannah Riverside is that we need batteries. We need batteries to get us through those peak periods, especially when, like today, it's raining here. Sun's not shining, of course, and if we have a surge in need for electricity, we would need batteries to make sure that we provide that need, and especially because it helps keep our electricity rate down by doing so. Basically, we need to use a solar field as like a peak shaving facility, so to speak. Okay, this is kind of our day-to-day scorecard. You know, part of our mission requirement vision is to provide to all Savannah Riverside reliable infrastructure and utilities, and that's every day. In a previous slide, I show where we look at our overall status and trending of each of our 12 systems on a monthly basis, but we're looking out towards the out years. We look very hard at each system to determine what projects and tasks are necessary to be able to rate a system green. And in this case, when I say green, this means the system is capable of performing its role today with only minor deficiencies. That doesn't mean that the system is good for the next, say, 5 to 10 years. And I have another slide that shows quite the contrary to that. So to maintain a green status, we have to have systemic program recapitalization so we can continue this on. And all that, of course, takes funding, which leads me to the next slide. Here's a quick snapshot of our two major budgets. One of those is our common infrastructure budget. This is the one that we, at least for our piece of the indirect budget for common infrastructure, that we get, of course, through the indirects from the PBSs, is that our base budget has been fairly constant, is what that is trying to show there, except for the orange, and that represents where we received some supplemental money so that we could do some of those recapitalization projects that I spoke of earlier. And same thing a little bit with the utilities. Our budgets have been kept fairly constant because we want our mission facilities, mission programs to have first priority. And we negotiate every year on how many dollars can go to landlord services through our indirect budgets and our utility rates. This is very important on I should say, the balancing between mission and support. And it's never an easy decision each year as we go into our execution year. But the orange represents what I would call, and I'll refer to it again, good years, when the programs have good solid base budgets and they're able to execute those budgets. Just like I'll refer to an analogy to taxes, then they get to pay a little bit more dollars into the indirect funds, and we look at both. Some of those dollars get to go back at the end of the year, and others we can devote to some of those improvement projects that we need for common infrastructure and utilities. And pretty much the last 2 years showed we've had pretty good supplemental budgets, or at least some dollars available. But unfortunately, COVID came along, then came Hurricane Sally, and there have been other challenges and emerging priorities on site. So we didn't quite get to enjoy the progress that we experienced back in starting in 2017 through 19. This next slide, I just wanted to show you that how much energy costs the site and what an impact it would have on our budgets if energy costs go up. And what we're showing here is that just the commodities of electricity and steam consume 2/3 of the site's FY21 utility budget of $110 million, almost $111 million up there. And what was left, the remaining budget, went towards the maintenance and minor improvements for all the other, also for the delivery of electricity and steam. The distribution lines, the wires, the transformers, et cetera, also were in there, as well as providing all the utilities when it comes to water, such as our service water system, domestic water system, fire water system, et cetera. So big point there is that the site is very much beholden to energy costs and where they go in the future. Now, once we have all that information put together, we put together plans so that we could plan not only our operations and maintenance from day to day, but also our program for improvements based on what we believe our budgets are going to be in the out years. And one of the things we do, I'll talk about briefly later too, is that we look at our risk. We look at, okay, what do we need to provide reliable infrastructure? What do we need to fix in the next year to keep it green, as I talked about in another slide? And how can we make it more efficient? And of course, we'll have to look hard at our budgets and make those hard decisions and prioritize. So each winter, we put together a new 5-year plan, and that coincides with a budget cycle. And what we do is make this a realistic plan. It's not a plan, it's not a pipe dream that sits on a shelf and said, gee, if we only had an extra $5 or $10 million, what would we do with it? No, this is a plan that we put together based on the funding that we believe, or we're pretty confident we're going to get. And yeah, we include those projects that we believe we could execute if possible, if we got some extra money that year. And like I said, that means that the programs have to have good, solid base budgets, and they got to be able to execute those base budgets before we can have that good year. And also what we put in these plans is that we also resource the design dollars and the prep dollars so that we can get our engineers to work and to have projects sitting on the shelf so that when those good years arrive, we're going to be ready to execute. So come about right now, there in the middle, we're putting together our infrastructure improvement plan for FY22. And what we're doing right now is that we took the FY21 plan and we're evaluating SR&S on how well they executed that plan. So that's our cycle. We start with a 5-year plan. Based on that 5-year plan, we put together our next FY plan, and then we evaluate and take our lessons learned from the current year plan and reincorporate that right back into the infrastructure or common infrastructure planning cycle. Okay, here's that dreaded slide I said earlier that here I had showing all that green in that waterfall chart earlier, and that was for day to day. Now, when we look at the true nature of our infrastructure, our utility systems especially, it doesn't look quite so green. And this is primarily, as you see over there in the pie chart, and the chart up above is probably pretty much due to age. Just the age of our system drags down their overall score in our facility information management system. Now we like to, talk about the old car analogy. What about I'm proud to say it. I used to had a 25-year-old car I would drive to work. I maintained it. I changed the oil like I was supposed to. I checked the tires. I made sure the lights work. But did it have all the bells and whistles, the backup cameras, the Bluetooth systems, and was it as efficient as today's? Heck no. And would I take it on a long trip? Probably not. So it's kind of like what I'm getting at is that we're doing a heck of a job maintaining these aged old systems and replacing when we can, but it's still, in some cases, not a 25-year-old car, but the backbone of a lot of our infrastructure is up to 70 years old, and we're having to deal with that. And so it's hats off to all the folks here at Savannah Riverside who maintain these systems and keep them running and keep them darn reliable here from the day-to-day basis. I'm just going to go quickly through a few slides to highlight some of the notable issues that we have on a few of our critical systems. And here we have electric power. And note that's Savannah River site. We do have a local power provider, and that's, you should be probably familiar with Dominion Energy. And they maintain our high voltage grid for us, as well as, of course, providing us with the commodity of electrical power. And we've, over the years, have grown and got a great relationship with them. And they've been extremely responsive whenever there is a problem. But most of our transformers and switching gear are still original. As you see in the upper picture, that is 70 years old. And we have a plan to address this, but it's going to take some supplemental dollars to our utility accounts, or a little bit of help from headquarters if a climate action plan may come down in the near future. So we're looking forward to replacing some of these really old transformers that we have. We maintain them right now, but and another thing, and I'd mentioned in our right sizing plan, we've identified that these transformers are oversized. They were originally put in to support a like they're in K area, a heavy water reactor and all its support facilities. Now it doesn't need nearly that much power, so we look forward to an opportunity to buy a transformer that's probably about calculated about a fourth to a third of the current size that we have there right now, and of course be more newer and efficient. And here, the biggest problem with our water systems across the board is the old metallic piping that was put in the early days when the site was built, and that stuff is starting to corrode. And we have plans and scopes of work put together to replace that, but digging up pipe or replacing pipe, especially in and around our mission facilities, is expensive work. And that's going to be we're going to have to definitely think hard and prioritize on cost as well as what the mission needs are at the time. Right now, we're doing a heck of a job maintaining the system as it is. I did want to point out there in the upper right-hand corner, you see that the 782A reservoir construction. I'm kind of proud to say that that dual-use tank up there was recently replaced in the A area. And that was done through a right-sizing study, in that we deactivated that tank and replaced it with its own dedicated fire water system, and we moved the service water system directly to the pumps so that the pumps can maintain the pressure to the A area service water customers. Okay, and many of our facilities are still original, and this really goes for our shops. And if you want to see our locomotive railroad shop, go ahead, it's over there near Parr Pond, by the way, you will find it does not look much different than you see in that picture above. And down in the lower picture, you see there, we used to pride ourselves on our unique and innovative systems to catch leaking rainwater from our leaking roofs. But although we still have a ways to go, this picture on that slide is not as commonplace as it was back in 2014. And I told you about our river water system, and I really love our river water system, but it's no longer used to provide cooling water to 5 heavy water reactors. But it is one of the site's most essential systems because it provides the water to our main steam plant, and which provides steam energy that powers the tank farms and is essential for Canyon and the DWPF processes. Now, but it also provides water for other things, and I mentioned it earlier, of course, and that's keeping us out of environmental regulator trouble by keeping Parr Pond and L Lakes full, so that the radiological contaminated sediments aren't exposed. And right now, we're currently in the middle of a plan to replace that facility's 70-year-old electric power system, both transformers and switchgear. We think we're pretty confident we're going to be able to do that in the next 2 to 3 years. Finally, everybody's favorite roads. Roads, except they're expensive to maintain and to keep them safe for all the 11,000, 12,000 workers who come on Savannah Riverside every day. We've been doing a great job filling potholes and repairing shoulders, but and we got in those good years, I said, from 17 to 19, we got 2 of our main roads done, and we got halfway on a third. Then we ran into some budget issues, but we had high hopes last year of picking up the pace again on repaving roads, but they were dashed by emerging needs and budget priorities. Speaking of emerging needs, here's one that came up on us almost really about a year ago to today, and that's by the time it got to us, it was Tropical Storm Sally. We had a major issue with a roof failure on one of our big admin training facility there in H area. So we had to divert the dollars that we wanted to spend towards repaving Road C, the major road here on site, right in the middle of the site, to cleaning up all the damage, not just on that roof and the building 766H, but also a number of facilities, old facilities, whose drainage in and around, especially in the low-lying areas of A area, took a big impact too. So we had to spend a lot of dollars repairing Tropical Storm Sally damage. Now, one of the things that we've done to try to highlight an area that we felt like needed improvements, and that was developing a facility habitability rating criteria. And this is a tool that we took on and to basically to prioritize which facilities needed improvements among others. And we're talking at administrative facilities where people habitate or they reside in. And since we have meager dollars typically in a given year for infrastructure, we wanted to make sure we were addressing the needs of where people are. And so we concentrate on administrative facilities and those that definitely have had maintenance neglected. And we're not talking just common infrastructure, facilities that normally fall under our indirect pool, but also the mission facilities as well. And we look at things like roofs. We have the basics, roofs, HVAC, and of course interiors of the facilities, as well as exteriors. Like, who wants to live in a building where the paint's coming off the walls or it looks like or it's not very appealing on the outside? So we looked at about 33 of these in FY20. And as we analyze the data, most of the problem is age. And as you can see in the little pie chart there, is that only 8% of our common infrastructure systems are less than 15 years old, and the bulk of them fall within the 30 to 50-year-old category. So we use this as to bring more attention on our administrative buildings, which usually get neglected in many cases. And as I said earlier, of our rough, for this past year, $6.7 million budget that we had for our facilities and roads for that matter, we were only able to allocate about 14% for those repairs. So we keep a list, we prioritize, and it's just going to be something we're going to be looking at and working on for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm going to jump back to sustainability a little bit. And we're proud that we've come up with some pretty innovative ideas on Savannah Riverside to improve the environment, as well as to save us energy and to actually improve safety. And I'll just point out, I wish I had one I could show you right here, but back in 2017 over in H area, somebody came up with a good idea because the water quality from one of the detention ponds wasn't alkaline enough. Therefore, that was due to this algae growth. So how do you keep algae from growing? Well, it's kind of like a plant inside, and well, cut off the sunlight. So essentially, I don't know how many thousands of these little 12-sided balls were placed inside this pool, and naturally, these are small, so they float up with the when the water gets high, and they float and contract when the water gets down. So that reduced, of course, the sunlight coming in, and that improved the water quality in that detention pond. One that pretty much centered in our group was working with SRNL, the lab, and they've got a very active drone group. And what can we do with drones? Well, instead of using our one of the helicopter assets that takes a pilot and very expensive to operate, we sent up a drone with a camera to look at our deactivated, decommissioned our reactors on site, because they're made out of concrete. Those of you, I'm sure, have sidewalks and driveways. It's amazing how any crack vegetation can find its way in, and we don't want that, because we want those things to stay watertight for perpetuity. And we've even experimented with drones going up with herbicides to kill plants that are growing on our reactor roofs, and versus having to send somebody up in a man lift to go up there and do the same. So we're pretty proud and look forward to the ever expanding use of drones. In this past year, I think Susan mentioned the use of zero-valent iron. Well, we tried that. We did that in 2019 and basically injected zero-valent iron with a food-grade material and created a reactive barrier. Now, we injected it. We didn't have to dig a trench and pour this in. We injected it. And this created a barrier for the for contaminated groundwater that has VOCs in it, so that when it flowed through and hit this barrier, the zero-valent iron was able to neutralize most of the chlorinated volatile organics, or VOCs. You've probably seen a lot of literature. So we were pretty happy, and we've got a honorable mention on DOE Sustainability Awards this past August. And I'm sure everybody is reading the newspapers or watching TV that when it comes to zero emission vehicles are coming more and more the thing to have, or are going to be necessary to fight climate change. So in keeping with that push towards zero emission vehicles, we are developing plans and designs to have 100% of our light duty fleet converted by 2030. And so right now we are moving out in this next FY22 to design and construct charging stations for the 61 electric vehicles. Headquarters has said that we would be allocated to receive in 23. And here's another kind of a sustainability, actually a sustainability, environmentally friendly thing that we did, good idea came up, is that when we were doing those roads, repaving them, we found that because their pavements were so bad that we had to basically mill up beyond just 1 or 2 inches of asphalt. In some cases, we had to go down as deep as 4 inches of milled asphalt. And normally that's the waste material. Most companies would just haul it away to a landfill. But we decided that, hey, we could use that stuff. And we work with the Forestry Service to basically take it and use it to buttress up our secondary, our rock roads off-site. So we were able to take all that material and use it and basically repurpose it here on site. And then as we were going on Road C, and that's the major road that comes in on site. If you've been on site, you know when you go under the overpass, so that either takes you, to here to B area or to continue on to the where the mission programs are. That's Road C, and it had like 60 culverts that needed to be replaced because these things over the last 70 years, many of them had failed, they were clogged, and we had severe drainage problems on Road C. And sure enough, when we pulled up the first one, we found that it had asbestos containing material holding it together. And so some smart people got together and did a cost analysis and decided that, hey, maybe it's better that we just leave those culverts in the ground. Otherwise, we would have had to go to the expense and the hazard of disposing that asbestos containing pipe, and it would just be better just to leave it there, fill the pipe full of grout, and just put a new culvert right alongside it. So we avoided a lot of costs that way, and it was basically a safety measure, kept us out of asbestos remediation work too. And real quickly, I'm just going to go through. Yeah, things aren't all bad. Now we made some great progress here in the last couple of years. Primarily, I would say BC before COVID. And in this case, we got a new HVAC system that we put on our measuring and test equipment facility, which is a very important facility because it's what gives the surety that everything that goes on the mission side, all the measurements that they're taking are accurate. So, and of course, the HVAC system there, because this facility requires very precise environmental controls, so that all their equipment is running to standard and is reliable. And here, this is a good one. If you ever, I hope you can come back on site and can have the opportunity to dine at our new our cafeteria facility, which is in the center of site at Building 76H. That's our training facility. And this is just some pictures of some of the improvements that we did when we ripped out the existing serving area, redid the floors, redid the refrigerators, and redid all the stoves, etc. So we were really proud of the improvements that we did there, not only in the serving area, but also there in the dining area. You'll see instead of kind of a very, very funny carpet type material, we now have better flooring, added some TVs at each end, and improved the lighting and made it more open. Here's our good example of a needed improvement. This is our onboarding facility. And this is building just to the right of where our badge office is. And so this was a facility that we didn't know whether to demo it or try to bring it back and repurpose it, but for not that many dollars, we decided, of course, first to put a new roof on it, and I'll show you that in a second. Just basically refurbish the building both inside and out, and also take care of some of the ugly landscaping that had been allowed to grow up and around it. And so this is our one-stop shop. It offers GET training, as well as houses our human resources folks, and to basically take care of people in one spot instead of before we used to have to lease facilities to perform GET training, and then they would have to come on site to different facilities in order to properly and process. So that's obviously a before and after shot of the outside. And here we have some shots of the interior. And here's that roof I was telling you about. And this is a good example of what we call a cool roof. Basically, it's an echo white acrylic coating to improve energy efficiency. And this is about the 17th roof that we did in this manner to help us with improve our energy costs and conservation. And still there's always some work to do, just to say that we do have some ugly buildings out there that we need to take care of, either to demo or to bring them back up to stuff so they can do their job, what we need them for them to do. And so we're constantly looking at how we can get the funding necessary to fix these problems. And one of the ways that we do that, especially for the big projects, is that when it comes to an infrastructure risk, we have an elaborate, very sophisticated method for prioritizing. Since dollars are always scarce, we want to make sure we spend them on the thing that's going to hurt us, we think was going to hurt us the most and soonest, so that we have basically a risk scoring criteria. It has 10 criteria that each has to be graded for each different risk that we feel that an infrastructure could help solve. And we also evaluate it with 4 business case type criteria. And that gives us an overall number, and we rank and stack them, and of course go through a lot of discussion on how best we could spend those dollars that we get each year. And I think finally, yeah, I just wanted to wrap up and say that we were, working hard. We're working hardest to improve the reliability of our common infrastructure and our utility system, so that they're there to support our current and future missions, not only just for DOESR, but also for NNSA. And you saw that we really work hard at prioritizing. We base that on risk more than anything else, as well as what we know we need to do when it comes to maintaining utility systems and buildings. And we try to keep keep the risk out in front of us. We don't want to ever realize them. So that's our big goal, is try to get ahead of risk, keep the site running from day-to-day basis, and always thinking that we need to be pushing forward those infrastructure improvements that'll get us out into the out years. Especially if we're going to have to be here at least till 2065. And we have a great team standing by to execute all those improvement projects that are in our plan, especially our 5-year plan. And we just need those dollars to give us the resources we need to fully execute that. We're proud of the work that we've done and look forward to a long future of continued reliable operations for our common infrastructure and utilities, so that we can support the Savannah River site. And with that, I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. That was great. It really looks like you're doing a good job of identifying those risks and prioritizing them. I have one question before we turn it over to all the board members. I'm curious, if you had to say which is your biggest hurdle, whether it's the amount of funds available or it's the scope of work that needs to be done, which one makes you lose less sleep?
Oh, well, that's kind of a chicken and the egg.
Yeah, I realize that.
Well, I shouldn't say it's not just the scope, the dollars, but there's also the time factor too. I mean, you could give us a lot of money. I mean, if we were able to receive a big chunk of money, but if we had to expend it within, say, the next year, that would be very difficult. So it's always a balancing act when it comes to a question like that. As I wanted to allude to earlier, we pretty much try to do all this planning ahead of time by looking at each issue that we have and assigning it a risk and evaluating that risk, so that on the common infrastructure side, when we rank and stack, then I would say, go look at my list and say, well, gee, James, my biggest worry right now is the river water system, because if that went out, then our big Amoresco steam plant, that's the bio-cogeneration facility, would be unable to operate. And if it can't operate, then that means the Canyon, DWPF, Tritium, and all the tank farms aren't going to be able to do what they need to do. That would be a major disaster for the sites. And that's why that's probably that is our top risk on the common infrastructure and utility side. So how's that?
Okay, questions from the board?
Yeah, Jim Gill.
Go ahead, Jim.
Excuse my ignorance, but is there any relationship between the SRS and the tire processing facility, the huge mounds of tires that are over by one of the gates?
That's a good question. I mean, there is, but it's not a facility that's owned and run or by the site. We have an energy savings performance contract with a company called Amoresco, and they run 4 of our 5 steam plants. One of those plants is called, it's a very sophisticated plant. And one of the things that, one of the fuels that they're allowed to burn in there, and under strict, of course, regulatory guidance, is chopped up tires. And so in a way, indirectly, we benefit from that plant. I mean, from the tire facility, but it's owned by Amoresco, and I believe they use the tires that they basically repurpose for other plants and facilities that they run throughout the Southeast. So long story short, it's not our facility, but at the same time, we do get fuel from it. I mean, to supplement the biomass.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any other questions from the board? Greg, go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks so much. A few questions real quick. Very early in your presentation, your nice presentation, you said something to the effect the infrastructure needs steady funding and boosts each year. And I want to make sure I understand exactly what's being said, particularly in terms of the boosts. Are the boosts additional funding that are taken out of a part of the generic SRS budgets that is reprogrammed towards infrastructure? Just remind me what the boosts are that you're referring to.
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, when I refer to that, we call it supplemental funding. It's dollars that we really didn't plan on. We always have a wish list. And I'll reiterate, is that when the mission programs have good budgets, they're able to do they get the dollars they need to do what they have to do, and then some, and they end up executing more dollars. When they execute dollars because of the rates, that creates additional dollars into our indirect pools. And that's always a good problem to have to deal with when you're talking about my side of the house, to have, these pools have a lot more dollars, but we have a budget too. We're set. We're okay. Say our utility budgets that you saw it earlier. Okay, $110 million. That doesn't give us, just because the Canyon or NNSA is burning more or requiring more electricity, doesn't mean that we can go spend that. We're bound by configuration control. We have a team where we have the senior management has to look at how are we going to spend those extra dollars that we have in those pools, because we may give those dollars back at the end of the year, or we may use them as that boost of supplemental funding to maybe buy a transformer for one of our big substations. I don't know if that's, so I always like to say is that when the programs have a good year, we have a good year. And that's what I mean by the boost. Definitely what we've seen in previous years. That little orange in that one bar, those bar charts. Yeah.
That makes sense. Are there any activities essential for safety that are being undermined by infrastructure issues?
I want to say I'm not aware of any that are dire in any way. Clearly, it's the chronic problems that you might have with facilities. in that if roofs are allowed to leak and you get a constant moisture problem, then you're going to get mold and industrial hygiene issues. And those are probably the biggest threat. And that's why we decided we need to look at habitability and really focus on that problem that we could have. And so that's what we're using as our tool to minimize that. But right now, I'm not aware of anything, any direct or dire safety related issues when it comes to infrastructure. Otherwise, they'd be our top priority. We'd be fixing it.
Gotcha. What about which EM activities are at greatest risk due to infrastructure issues?
Which EM activities? That's a good question. I mean, it's hard to say specifically which ones. I alluded to some of those. I think our electrical power backbone is vulnerable because we're talking 60, 70-year-old transformers in many cases. They're working fine now. They get checked. We work with the Dominion Energy to inspect them, once a quarter. We walk them down, but they're still 70 years old, well beyond their typical design life, even on the commercial side, is what I'm told. And of course, I alluded to the water infrastructure too. We're able to plug leaks when they pop up, but on a continuing basis like that, it's not going to be reliable for the facilities, nor is it going to be cost efficient for us. So we believe it's about time when we get that boost or those supplemental dollars to start replacing some of these, at least the major lines that are made with metallic pipe.
So the major consideration is making sure that this backbone keeps running so that you don't have some sort of cascade effect, sort of like you mentioned with the river water system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. How receptive is HQ to y'all's proposals for infrastructure funding?
I think they're receptive. Again, but it's always a prioritization and mission need. It's just a hard problem. We just James alluded to earlier. We had a major workshop with headquarters and really anybody who wanted to participate across the complex, where we were able to highlight not just the good things that we're doing, but also where and like I tried to show here, where our weaknesses are and where we could use some help to address that. And we're hoping by having a workshop such as that we better educated headquarters on our needs and especially how we operate. We're a little unique when it comes to using indirect funding to fix and to operate and maintain our infrastructure, and that's a separate brief in itself. But it is what it is, and so we're looking for help from headquarters on helping us with these needs through things like actually they don't call it climate action plan anymore. They're calling it the climate adaptation and resilience plan, I was told about last week. So we've got projects that we have in there that will help us, say, with our electrical infrastructure issues.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I'll leave it at this. Last question then. So how much to make everything green on your waterfall chart or whatever you called it? How much money would that take?
Oh boy, that's right now, based on the risk and what we could what we can achieve in 5 years, we had done that calculation. It would be about 140 million.
Well, out of a $1.75 billion budget.
I know, but it's still, I know it's still a lot of money. But that's on top of everything else. So I'm just talking about above our base budgets is what that number roughly is. And again, I'm the infrastructure and utilities guys. If I added in everybody else's needs, not only for infrastructure and everything else, we would be very, very high. I'm not even going to speculate. I'd have to go back, look at my charts on everybody else's needs across the board, but it would be a lot higher because I was just quoting common infrastructure and utilities then.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board members?
Hey, Jim, I just got to make sure everybody understands. You get the 1 hour brief from Dave Bender, but he spent all summer putting together that infrastructure meeting he talked about. And headquarters did ask us to do that. So they are very interested that we get the infrastructure right. But Dave's got 19 more hours of briefing material if you're interested, because we spent 4 days, about 20 hours going over all the infrastructure for the whole site. So he's giving you a very condensed version here today. He did a fantastic job organizing that over the summer.
And 2 videos, by the way, 2 videos.
We definitely appreciate all the work that you put into that, Dave. Unfortunately, I didn't put in a federal register that allows us to go for 19 hours, so we're going to have to cap it on this. Is there any other questions from the board members for Dave? No infrastructure questions? Don't see any open mics or raised hands. All right. Dave, thank you very much. We appreciate your time today. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. If you'll stop your screen share when you get an opportunity. Thanks. All right, folks. On our agenda, we have a planned break here. Do you folks need it? Do we need to take 10? Yeah, Craig is absolutely adamant. Yep, we're taking 10 right now. So why don't we do that? It is 2:40. Let's make sure that we're back at 2:50, and we'll keep our meeting going then, okay? 2:50, folks. Thank you.
Hey, James.
Yeah, Jim.
I've got to run, so do me a favor, please record my vote as approving the change to the SOP.
You got it. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you
Alrighty.
checking for that. And then to give everybody a 2-minute warning. All right, well, I'm showing 2:50 and this is our scheduled return time. So we're gonna hope that everybody else is back online or at least ready to get back into it. And we'll start running down the rest of our agenda for this afternoon. Up next, we have the discussion on recommendation 370. Now, this is the recommendation that was passed at a special meeting in June, where you folks were asking DOE to make some changes to the membership process. And Greg, you and I had a brief conversation about this recommendation and the response just before the meeting started. I was wondering if maybe you just wanted to let everybody know like a proposed path forward, or if you wanted to open it up to the group for discussion.
Well, yeah, thanks, James. I mean, so I'm glad we've gotten this proposal in, or this recommendation in. I'm glad we got a response to it. Quite frankly, it came back about as I expected. As it was being put together, I realized we were suggesting things that may need to be addressed at different levels, and I think that indeed it was reflected in the response. Basically, you know, they agreed with our proposal to make sure that the board stays the roster stays as full as possible, and then the other two, the mechanisms that we addressed, they kicked up to the higher levels of DOE, which I think makes perfect sense. The only other real information I guess I can provide at this point is I am hoping that at the National Chairs meeting, which I believe is coming in I think it's the first week or so of October. Is it first or second week? First?
Yeah, it's the first week. I got the date sitting somewhere. I believe it's that week of the 8th, 9th, somewhere in there.
Right. So I'm still hoping this is something that will be addressed at that meeting. I don't recall having seen the agenda yet. I don't know if it has made it on the agenda. I will have an opportunity to bring things up myself. So if it doesn't get on the agenda formally, we might have an opportunity to at least present it to people at the National Chairs meeting. When we did talk about this previously, they seemed to share our concern. The other chairs did, at least as much as I could tell, with this issue. So I think it would probably get a sympathetic hearing, at least from the other chairs, how the DOE hierarchy is responding is a completely different issue. So, and it's not different in the sense that I think they're being, you know, difficult or anything. We just don't have much feedback in that regard from the next level up and the next levels up. So that's sort of my read in terms of what is happening. James or anybody, Delisa, Amy, anybody else have any suggestions beyond that?
So I have seen the agenda, and I guess I owe it to you. I apologize, Greg. It's not explicitly written on there, and we did follow up about it. We asked, you know, where is it? They did give us a time slot when it's going to be available for discussion. We made sure that they understood that that was a chair's recommendation that you were putting forward. So we have been assured that it's going to be part of the discussions at the chair's meeting.
Okay.
So,
are we going, I guess, I don't see, I've not been involved with making a recommendation from a site cab to the national level cab. Is there going to be an opportunity to formally make that as a recommendation to the chairs cab group?
Yes. What happens is you debate it like any other draft. You may work on it a bit overnight and then come back the next day. And if the bulk of the chairs agree with it, just like any other chair's recommendation, then it will go to each board to be approved, just like we do when we get chair's recommendations. So that's kind of the general process. And I think we were talking about just leaving 370 open for now rather than trying to close it until after the chair's meeting.
Yeah, that was my general sense, but I'd certainly like to hear from the other CAB members and see what they think. I think the situation still seems dynamic to me in terms of what can happen. So I'm not sure that closing it right this moment at this meeting would be the best thing to do. It would certainly reduce our flexibility some.
Sure. Charles?
Greg, I completely concur with your decision on that, to leave this open. It appears to me that if we were to close this thing, it's almost as if we're pulling the rug out from under you to go to the committee meeting and have it addressed there. I think it's an important issue. Here we are working with a 6-9 member cab or something when we're supposed to be at 25. And so I wholeheartedly support leaving it open until the full chairs meeting.
Thanks, Charles. Any other comments from board members? Amy, you've almost looked on the edge of your seat like you want to say something and you're holding yourself back. No?
Well, I did, but I think you covered it. I think, Greg, it's important, to us that you speak on behalf of the CAB and on behalf of the citizens. And so we are fully support you sharing your concerns in that forum. And I think it's entirely appropriate. And as James has described the process, and it'll be easy to see how it works there when you get there and share it with the group. There will be discussion and the group will decide what they want to send forward to the department.
Great. Thank you, Amy. That's reassuring. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, so I think we've got a general consensus that not hearing any objections to the idea that we're just going to leave this one open for now. We'll set it aside. We'll come back after the chairs meeting. We'll talk about it again in November and see where we stand. Okay. If that sounds good, if there's no objections to that, why don't we move into the next phase and we can take a look at that operating procedures change. Now, it was one little line. It's not much, but it is a fairly significant bit. We need to figure out how we're going to deal with ties in elections. We've got to have a process. It needs to be written down and official. Heather, if you can, do you mind pulling that up? I just want to show that one line that I added in. Typed based off of feedback from all the boards, and it's a very short sentence. Maybe you had to step away. I'll pull it up too. We'll see who can erase to share screen. All right, there we go. So, there was this one little bit. Ties will be decided by a coin toss witnessed by the DDFO. That was the one little line that I added to it. Again, based off of feedback from the board members after our conversations. I've sent this out, giving you a chance to take a look at it. I hope you've taken the opportunity. So now with that, I'm going to ask, are there any questions, comments, concerns?
James, this is Greg real quick. We've specified it for the election of officers. I'm pretty sure, and I want to make sure this is the case though, committee chairs count in this body as well, right? In terms
yes,
of
it would be for any elections.
Okay. I probably should know this. What if we have Do we have a tie-breaking mechanism on votes, say, on recommendations and things like that?
We don't, but I'm pretty sure. Pull it back up now. I don't know why. Does it look like I'm still screen sharing? I've literally closed the tab.
We're still seeing the, I think it's from Heather, though.
Oh, Heather's sharing it now. Okay, so I'm not insane. Cool. Thank goodness. I'm pretty sure that I was going to say, I think that recommendations have a higher threshold, but no, we don't have a mechanism in place for that. And I'm a little less gung-ho about doing that. I'm definitely open to talking about it. The reason why is that when we publish a recommendation that says it's been approved by the CAB, it doesn't come with an asterisk on how many people voted for it or whether it was decided by, a tie or a coin toss. And so if we allow that to happen, then we'd have recommendations that were decided by a coin toss that would be full effect with all 25 members of the board, where it really could just be a small subset of folks. The implications kind of scare me a little bit. I would love it if there were a tie, we turned around and we kept debating until we came to something. I'd rather have the null existence of no recommendation than a recommendation decided by a coin toss, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a fair philosophy, in my mind at least, to back it with. Although that said, it is conceivable that with a full roster, say somebody had to step out and we had 24 people there, you could still end up with a tie with a fairly substantial, participation. So, okay, I think what you're saying makes sense, at least to me.
We've had narrow margins. That's the one thing. One thing that I'm actually thinking about is there's narrow margins with another recommendation that was passed by the board that we get questions about every 6 months or so. It's a couple of years old, but there was a reduced number of board members. We just barely made quorum, and it was by one person that passed. And we still kind of get questions about that now and again. And I would hate to have to say, well, actually, that one was a coin toss. Like,
that's fair.
But I'm getting an ulcer right now just thinking about it.
Okay.
But if that's the direction you guys want to go in, I'm happy to talk about it. We could figure it out. We could work out the verbiage. How do we feel about this one for elections? Do we have any questions, comments, concerns from the board? Anybody feel differently than what we've written? Who wants to make a case for something else? Hearing none, seeing no hands, no open mics. Greg, what do you want to do? Do we want to go into, well, let me pull up my agenda here and be sure. The supposed to be public comments and then voting. We did not receive any public comments for this meeting. We'll keep the public comment period open for another week. Any comments that we receive via email will be appended to the meeting minutes, just so that everybody knows. So when these are published, make sure that you check and see if there are any additional public comments added. With that, we can move into voting. Greg, do you want to ask for a motion to approve this SOP?
Yeah, sure. And by the way, I think also, we are just having, I think actually Charles's hand is up. Charles, did you want to?
Let's go for it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt this change in our operating procedures.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Do we have a second then, I guess? Can I second it, James?
I don't see why not.
I'll second.
Candace
did.
Candace, I see your hand up. All right. I'm going to treat that as a second. If not, Greg was going to do it. We don't prohibit chairs from full participation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read names down the roster, just so that everybody knows, in case you didn't catch it. Just after we went to break, Jim Gill stayed on for a minute, and he did vote yay. Just for the record, let everybody know. When you don't hear me call his name, that's why. He knew that he had to step away. So I'm going to start with Phyllis and then go to Candace. Phyllis? the other one, the microphone looking one, not the camera one. Give me a thumbs up for yay. Up for yay, down for nay. I got it. All right, cool. Candace?
Yay.
All right. DeAndre, I don't see you on, but I'm going to ask anyway. Once, twice. Charles and then Greg. Charles?
Yay.
And then Greg?
Yay.
Great. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yays. Passes unanimously with everybody in the room voting yay. All right. That is it. From here, we'll send that up to headquarters. They like to be looped in and have the chance to review anytime we update their procedures. I'll send that off today. And as soon as they give us the go-ahead, that'll be in effect. And that is how we will decide ties and elections going forward. All right. From here, it looks like we have no other agenda topics left. So I'm going to open it up to the board members. Is there anything that you wanted to discuss today? Anything that you felt like we need to tackle in order to be successful that we didn't cover? No? All right, Greg, I'm going to let you close it out for us today.
All righty. Thank you, James. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. Thank you for all of the agency personnel and everybody coming and helping us out and attending and providing information to us and making your contribution in a really important and major way that way. Thank you, board members, for participating and thinking about all these important issues we dealt with. I feel real good about what we did and what we've done, and look forward to working more with everybody going into the November meeting. And with that, I will close it, I guess. Am I the one who closes it, or do you close it, James?
As the chair, you get to do it.
All righty. Thank you, everybody. I will see you in November. We are finished for this meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. You guys need anything from me?
No, thank you. Good job. I'm happy and content.
Good. All right. Thank you, everybody. Delise, are you happy?
I am. Yeah. Good job. I was just gonna say, I guess the only thing is, which we still don't have it confirmed, but yes, we will see everybody in November. We just don't know if it's actually going to be in person or not. So it's kind of good that, no one really said that. I know Heather's, working towards, the goal of, having